Welcome back to Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I am paying special tribute to Richard Thomas on behalf of his birthday. So please join me in wishing a very happy birthday to Richard Thomas.
Happy birthday, Richard. All of us Walton Geminis, we like to hang out because we know we're the best.
Hey, I heard archaeologists in Egypt just dug up your birth certificate. Happy birthday, brother.
Happy birthday, Richard. Man, you're old. But then that makes me old too. So anyway, enjoy your day. I love you.
Well, I have nothing to say, Richard. I love you. You're my pretend son, but even better, you're my dear friend. I love you deeply. Happy birthday. I'm glad you were born. Can you imagine if you weren't born? We'd all be broke. Thank you.
I had the pleasure of first working with Richard when we shot The Homecoming. So along with all of the kids and Ellen Corby, we've all been together since that October of 1971 when it all began. And I have to admit that during the course of The Homecoming, I developed the biggest crush on Richard. And I was just heartbroken when we finished filming. And I thought, oh, I'll never see him again. And then, of course, we found out that we were going to be doing The Waltons together. So that was very special for me. And I did get over my crush. I mean, I think I will always sort of have a crush on him. I just adore Richard. But yes, I did outgrow that teenage crush. I always loved the relationship between John Boy and Mary Ellen. I have talked about that, but we had such fun with the bickering and the bantering and that brother-sister relationship. And it started in the first episode that we filmed, which was The Hunt, where Mary Ellen is teasing him about not being able to shoot or being scared of it, and she comes up behind him and and sort of startles him as he's sort of practicing shooting. And then in The Typewriter, we had a whole different sort of relationship where Mary Ellen accidentally sells the typewriter he borrowed from the Baldwin sisters to the junk man, and he just lights into me and yells at me and crushes her. And so that was a whole other very traumatic moment between Mary Ellen and John Boy. Then there were other aspects of the relationship. In The Awakening, he was very empathetic as a big brother. And when I moved into the shed and instead of him being able to have it, and that was and at the end that he gave me these beautiful yellow roses, recognizing what I was going through as a young teenage girl. So that was he could be very caring as a brother. He could be a pain, we could bicker, we could tease, but ultimately he also was very caring. In The Easter Story, John Boy was the one that taught Mary Ellen how to dance, and we had fun with that. And the sort of, oh, you got to smile at each other, and that pretend smile that we put on. And I always loved dancing with Richard because he was such a good dancer that he just was easy to follow, and that was great. And then in the episode, The Quilting, he was the one that really took Mary Ellen to task for her behavior as she's hiding in the attic and not going to come to the party that Grandma's throwing for her, and really just gave her a different perspective on it. And ultimately that changed her mind, and she did come down and join that quilting party. Beyond the relationship between John Boy and Mary Ellen, there were episodes that everything focused on John Boy, of course, but some of the standout ones for me were The Runaway with Jim Bob and that dynamic and what went on there, and him, finding him and Jim Bob running away and all of the fun stuff that happened there. And then ultimately it leading to a positive experience for both of them. Another episode that revolved around Jim Bob was when in The Secret, when Jim Bob starts thinking maybe he was adopted, and they ultimately find out that actually what happened was that he had a twin that died at birth. So a very emotional episode, and I loved John Boy was the one that took Jim Bob to go search and found that out, and he's the one that basically sort of said, I think, you two, Mom and Daddy, that you need to talk with Jim Bob because he's very hurt about what's gone on here. So just being a great big brother to Jim Bob. I loved in the episode the journey that John Boy had a plan. He was going to go to this dance with Marcia Woolery, and because Maggie really put pressure on him and made her quest something that John Boy really cared about as well. So he was willing to forego his own personal choice to take this older lady on this journey to the sea so that she could have this final experience for herself in her love story, in a sense. So, how many young people would do that for an old lady, basically? I don't know. But it said a lot about John Boy as a character, that he would do this, as a person, that he cared and was compassionate enough to take her on this journey. And ultimately, it was a great experience for him as well. He was really challenged in the episode, The Odyssey, when Sarah Simmons comes back and is pregnant, and he ends up having to deliver this baby in this cabin in the middle of a huge storm. So that was a real growing up moment for John Boy. But he did great. I also love the scene between John Boy and Elizabeth in the treehouse in the burnout, when Elizabeth is afraid to interact with anybody in the family because she thinks everybody she loves dies, her cat and that the house may be burned down because of her. So she feels like bad things happen to people she loves, and John Boy is able to convince her that that isn't the case, and just has a real sweet scene with her up in that treehouse. Two of my all-time favorite scenes of Richard's are in the season 5 episode, The Firestorm, the book burning scene, and his interaction with both Reverend Fordwick, challenging him, and then with Mrs. Brimmer. Just such an amazing scene, and he did such great work there. And the other one was in The Easter Story, the scene between John and John Boy up on the mountain, when John Boy accuses John of giving up on Mama and that he's never going to do that. And he takes off, and they just have this amazing scene up on the mountain. That was shot up in Fraser Park, and they were running through the snow, and then they were up there and the winds were blowing and it was cold, and you just felt the elements, and you just felt the intensity of the emotion of both Ralph and Richard. It was one of my favorite scenes for both of them. So that scene always hits me whenever I see it. In real life, Richard has a lot of the same characteristics of John Boy. He is very animated. He is very passionate and full of life and energy and all of that. But he is also a real prankster, and he has a whole other side. He's very sophisticated. He's very well read. And the prankster came out a lot on the set at that point in time, like in the shooting of the episode in the hot springs for the Heritage, that he and Will both mooned the camera and ultimately ended up mooning a tour bus. And there were a lot of pranks that were carried out, and Richard was often an instigator. He and John Ritter together were like two kids playing pranks on each other, and our craft serviceman, Eddie Villa, he and Richard were always trying to prank each other as well. So lots of pranks. Richard was very upbeat. He never flubbed his line. I mean, almost never flubbed lines. He was very professional. He was always, ready. He was incredibly generous with his fellow actors. He always showed up for the other actors, whether he was on camera with them or off camera delivering lines. Just very well read, and sophisticated, but genuinely a nice person. And I have always known him to be very gracious with fans whenever he encounters them. If he's doing theater and they wait at the stage door, he's, unless there's some absolute reason he can't, he will engage, he will sign autographs, he will take pictures. So just one of those really nice guys, and type of thing that I think we always like to find out is that the people we admire on screen are people that we would also admire in real life. And I think Richard is very much that person. As I mentioned, Richard is a great dancer. He grew up with parents who were ballet teachers, ballet dancers, ran a ballet school. So he had early dance training, and which is why I always loved dancing with him. And we got to see some of that in particular in the episode The Marathon, when he dances with Daisy Garner in that marathon. So any number of times there were episodes where there was dancing involved, and he was always very graceful and coordinated. He may not think he is as much so as he is, but I think everybody else thinks so. But in real life, he tended in the 70s to wear these like skin tight pants, and even on the show, I think there were some times where he managed to split his pants. And I know a couple times when we were having parties or whatever, and he was dancing, and he managed to split his pants and had to kind of do a kind of an exit, trying not to reveal the fact that he had completely split his pants. But we always kind of had a laugh about that. So he had a great sense of humor even about himself. He could laugh at himself as well. After the Waltons, after he left the show after the 5 seasons of his contract, he went on to have a tremendous career. So I think he has said that he feels that it was the right decision for his career to leave at that point. I mean, he was only about 25 or something when he left, so he had many years ahead of him to diversify what he had done. He had done work, of course, before the Waltons, which was why he was cast as the lead character. But some people may feel that he never did anything as prominent as the Waltons, and he has even said that he feels that that's what his gravestone will read, John Boy died or whatever. But I think it's just because when you aren't doing the same thing week after week, that people don't always know about it. And people who are fans of the Waltons may not be fans of some of the other types of shows that Richard has done. But that doesn't mean to say he hasn't had quite a career, and that he hasn't done work that was as good and perhaps even better than the work he did on the Waltons, because he was so young. So he has grown as a performer. He's been very diverse. He's done things like Hallmark movies that were very sweet and tender, and he's played bad guys, and he has done a ton of theater. And I have had the pleasure of seeing him on stage many times, and he's just always so compelling and so committed and so invested in the characters that he just brings them to life. It's a joy to watch him and be part of that energy. I had the pleasure of being able to be right there for that energy on screen, but which is just different in real life. And the theater is why we go to the theater, to feel and experience that in the room, in the moment energy. He just, I think last year, completed a 2 or 3 year tour in the lead role of Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird, in which he was brilliant. And later this year, he will be going out on tour in the one-man show about Mark Twain. So look for tickets for that. See, and if it comes to your area, I think he's well worth seeing. I could go on and on about Richard because I just absolutely adore him. So I wanted to wish him a very, very happy birthday. And I'm sure you will have many more ahead because, let's face it, he never ages, right? He is youthful both inside and out and deserves all the best that comes his way. So thank you very much for helping me share in this birthday tribute to Richard. I will be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.